All right, gentlemen, we've got a certain subject I want to discuss here. Whole separate video. I'm sure we're going to get into it later in the week as far as the game itself goes. But there's an influential figure that's making his return to the Commonwealth of Kentucky this weekend. The man is John Calipari. He will be coming back to Rupp Arena for his first time since taking the Arkansas job back in April of last year. Derb, me and you are going to be on site at the game. A hot topic on Twitter this week so far that I've seen, and it's only Monday. I mean, Kentucky fans, we got a game tomorrow against Tennessee. Let's lock in here. But a large amount of the dialogue going around is how Cal's going to be receptive. And, the last couple of years didn't end too well. You had the Oakland loss, haven't made a second weekend since 2019. St. Peter's back in 2021, 2022 season. So the Calipari era, there was a lot of built-up animosity there at the end, and I think everybody was pretty happy to see him go. It was kind of a mutual parting of ways. But as far as his reception goes, I mean, he's coming back to a school that he coached at for a long time with an in-conference rival. And given the way that things ended, how do we think he's going to be received on Saturday night?
I mean, I don't know if it'll be like an awful reception, but I definitely feel like Kentucky and Kentucky fans should wait till he rides off into the sunset to give him a good return home. At the end of the day, he went to a in-conference school, coming to our place to play us, which the schedule makers knew what they were doing when they did that. They knew this would be a big game, and I definitely wouldn't be surprised to hear some boos. And, the student section has the whole, the players suck and the coaches suck too, champ. So I don't expect that to be any different.
Yeah, no, and I mean, Blake, obviously, he left a hell of a legacy at Kentucky. I mean, he did one of the best jobs with that program of anybody in college basketball history, really, because people forget that when he got to Kentucky in 2009, Kentucky was not Kentucky at all. They were just reeling off the Billy Gillispie era. Nothing went right. I mean, Billy Clyde, he was getting arrested for DUIs as the head coach of Kentucky. I mean, that's a no-go. And the performance overall was just terrible. And he revived that program. I mean, first year he brings in John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, gets to an Elite Eight, and then shortly after followed the Final Fours in the 2012 Natty, the 2015 undefeated season. And then from that point on, I think the fan base started to grow a little bit restless because obviously no Final Fours for the program since 2015. Like I said earlier, first time not making it to a second weekend since 2019 now. And there was a lot of, obviously there's a legacy left there by Cal, but with the way things ended, I think that kind of makes this reunion thing complicated. I mean, you're repping the Wildcats hat there. What's your side of things? I asked Derb. I'd like to get your input on this as well.
I mean, it all comes down to like really how the Kentucky fans like feel coming into Saturday. I mean, I feel like it's going to be really awkward for both sides. Calipari almost cried in the press conference talking about this game. It's just going to be an emotional day, I feel like, for that guy and probably some of his staff members. I mean, John Calipari, he's a legend at Kentucky. I've had the chance to meet him a couple times. Great guy. Like he left behind a legacy of more than just NBA draft picks and one championship and some deep tournament runs. I really think he left behind a legacy of like doing stuff for the community, like putting the community first, things like that. Because when he was at Kentucky, he made that an emphasis for his players. He wanted them to go out in the community, help people who were in need, and he kind of made that a routine for his Wildcats program. So I mean, emotions are going to be high this weekend. It's going to be a really fun game, even though Kentucky's been kind of disappointing as of recent. And Vanderbilt, or not Vanderbilt, I'm sorry, Arkansas has been really weak in SEC play. They only have the one win against Georgia, and that was like an abysmal shooting performance for both sides. So, I mean, it's still going to be one of the most exciting games, I feel like, in college basketball and like recent history for regular season games. Because this is like a TV or movie type of script we're having right in front of us. Like a Hall of Fame coach coming into his old program's gym literally the next year. Like this, I don't recall this ever happening really at all in my lifetime. It probably has happened a couple times, like Ed Cooley, when he made the move from one team to another, and then now Calipari. But I mean, Calipari's a legend, man. Like I just don't recall somebody as like big of a name as him going into his old team's arena literally the next year.
Yeah, and I will say too, it's a complete travesty that College Game Day isn't coming to Lexington on Saturday. I get it, UNC Duke. You like the appeal of that rivalry. It's obviously the best in college basketball history, in my opinion. But I mean, this UNC team stinks. Like, let's just be
Yeah.
honest. And this is a matchup UNC Duke. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a great rivalry, but it happens every year, and it's going to happen again here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, not to cut you off. That's what I was gonna say is, this one of those. It happens twice, so I don't really understand the point.
Yeah, and I mean, this is like this thing with Cal coming back. I won't say it's once in a lifetime because I mean Ed Cooley, he's done it with the move to Providence to Georgetown, so it's something that happens. But like to a level of this height in terms of John Calipari and the brand he brings, the icon that he is, and what exactly he did at Kentucky, it's just something that we really haven't seen in the sport.
Yeah, you're seeing the matchup of two brands. Cal University, as he put it, and the University of Kentucky. All 8 titles, everything that in the line. And
Yeah.
like I said, so this probably isn't, it's like a once in a lifetime thing. Like I said, on this level, and I don't know how many years Cal has in him, but I mean, at some point or another, he's going to want to hang it up. So.
Yeah, I really don't know how much longer he has, to be honest with you. It just, I don't know. It's hard to get a read because, like, sometimes he seems like he's reinvigorated. Like, when he got to Arkansas, he was fired up, telling people about how he was excited for a new opportunity to develop young men and all that. And then you look at his press conferences recently, things are going wrong. He just looks defeated. And it's tough to watch, but we'll talk more about, like, matchups specifically and all that stuff on the preview and who's going to win. But strictly just from the narrative of this game and everything that surrounds this game, I mean, Blake, it's weird to call this a must-win game for Mark Pope because Arkansas is a very underwhelming team. But when you just have, Kentucky fans' animosity towards Cal, all the drama that came with the coaching search that led to Pope and the way that Cal left, and now he's coming to your gym with Arkansas. This just feels like a spot where if you're Mark Pope, all the pressure is on you to get a result here because I could see this season taking a bad turn if Cal comes into that arena on Saturday and has a vintage coaching performance. He always has that one game a year where it looks like vintage Cal, and if I'm Mark Pope, I'm trying to get this game by any means necessary.
Yeah, this definitely feels like a must win. It's not really in terms of like seeding or like future of what the team looks like in March. But I mean, when you're talking about a Hall of Fame coach coming into his old gym, and there's been practically just bitterness between both sides, Arkansas fans, Kentucky fans going at each other over social media about Calipari leaving, recruiting, all these different things, comparing success of the new coaches. And I just think it's going to be all out hell basically at that game. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a decent amount of Arkansas fans probably rooting hard against the Wildcats, and it's going to be literal warfare, I feel like, in there.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a raucous environment. I mean, Derb, we've seen what Twitter's been like all season on the Kentucky-Arkansas forefront. So if that's any foreshadowing of what this game's going to be like, it's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a must-win game for, I guess, 2 reasons. I know we're going to get to the matchup and win-loss side of it. Obviously, Kentucky's at 3-3 in the SEC right now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's not bad, not great. So, you got to get the easy win and you can get them. This is the easy win. But, this is a game that Kentucky should win. You can't really afford to lose it. And then, obviously, Kentucky fans probably be in shambles if they lose just because Arkansas fans are never going to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after what you used to talk about on Twitter. It's been a war zone ever since he left. is it April when he officially left?
April. Yeah, April.
Yeah. So in those months from April to now, it's been a war zone on Twitter. Whether it be Arkansas fans taking shots, Kentucky fans taking shots, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, anytime one of these teams loses, I just open up Twitter and just go get your popcorn out and look at what's unfolding because it's always just both sides going at it. And this is really Cal's move has kind of revived this rivalry in the SEC because I remember in the 90s, I mean, I've heard from my family that's obviously older than me. They've said that Arkansas, in their prime run in the 90s, that was a rivalry type matchup when it came to Kentucky versus Arkansas. So it's definitely brought back some juice. And another thing I'm thinking about in all of this that I don't know if you all have really been pondering or not, you got to wonder almost like the weight of this game. Do we think that the Kentucky players, the guys on that roster, are even really aware of it? Because, I mean, Pope, he preaches like the history of Kentucky basketball and the guys that have come before and all of that stuff. So I feel like they're not oblivious to it, but I don't know if this game's going to be as big of a deal for the players as it is the fans. I mean,
I think they get it though. Like, most of them are on like active on social media, and they're not oblivious to the fact that these fans are literally begging for this win. I mean, it definitely has a feeling of a high drama game. I mean, I feel like even though Arkansas has struggled this year and in conference play, I still think it's going to be a really close game just because of how much is really on the line. And then you add into the mix the Arkansas players that don't forget, like they're not going to forget their time at Kentucky. They're going to want to come in there and probably beat Kentucky. Well, not probably. They're going to want to, obviously. And I'm sure they're going to get some boos. I feel like Aduthiero might get some applauses, but besides that, I feel like the rest of the guys might get booed. So both sides definitely get this game. Obviously, the Kentucky side, there's not many players that were on that team besides like Grant Darbyshire. I think he's the only returning guy. And
Walker Horn.
Walker Horn as well, yeah. But besides those two, then, I mean, that's a whole, like a fresh team, fresh program. But these guys definitely get it.
Yeah, and I mean, Derb, what do you think about that? You think Pope's going to be kind of nailing down the importance of this game when it comes to the fans, or you think he's going to take the mentality of just another SEC game, don't let it get to your head? But I just feel like it's too hard to block out the external factors when it comes to this matchup.
I could see Pope taking the just another game approach. But even if players don't necessarily understand the importance like the fans or the game itself, I hope they understand how big of a deal it could be for Pope. Because, the tide hasn't shifted on Pope in the Kentucky fan base at all. But, it's not been as smooth sailing as it was at the beginning of the year. So, hopefully that they take this as an opportunity to step, for that guy who believed in them, bring them into the program like this. And, but I guess trying to prove that it was the right decision, not just for him, but for them.
Yeah, and Blake, he kind of led into another thing I was saying. I mean, you got to consider, too, on the Arkansas side of things, DJ Wagner, Big Z, Adu, Billy Richmond, and Carter Knox were committed to the program. Like, there's Kentucky guys that most likely would have been wearing the jersey this year if Cal was still there. So they're obviously going to know the importance of this game, and they're probably going to have some extra juice coming into it. So it's definitely emotions are going to be running high, and I alluded to it earlier with the overall reception. Let's put it in terms of a percent. I'll start with you, Derb. What do you think's the percentage of boos, no applause, or just, cheering? Do you think anybody cheers or no?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if the amount of cheers and boos were just about equal.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, 50-50 split.
I know that probably seems like a right in the fans' answer, but I do know if that's how it could be because, there's a lot of fans. I don't feel like it's a stretch to say some fans hate Cal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially a lot of your older fan base that was alive during the 90s and all that. They've been calling for his head since, 2018 probably?
Probably even earlier. I mean, some fans were really upset back when the undefeated season got broke. So it's been a lot of tension with the like you said, the older part of the fan base. I think the younger part gave him a little bit more grace towards the end.
Yeah, because for a lot of it, for a lot of your younger fans, around like our age, for the most part, Cal is all they ever knew. So it's hard to imagine anything different than that, obviously, up until this year. So
Yeah.
I do think there'll be a lot of love on that side of it, a good little bit, but I definitely think you'll hear your fair share of boos in there.
Yeah, Blake, you think it's a 50-50 split as well, or you think it's going to lean more one way than the other?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be 50-50. There's going to be some of the, let's just put it right out there, old heads that hate Cal now. And there's going to be the other half of probably the younger generation applauding him. I mean, like you guys said, you got the people that understood what Cal did, not just on the court, but off the court. And then you guys are you're going to have the other side that just is thinking about like now, like their tunnel vision and what Cal just recently did with Oakland, St. Peter's. Losing to those teams really hurt some of that fan base. So, yeah, I definitely think it's going to be 50-50.
Yeah, and I guess to give my perspective just on the fan side of things strictly, I mean, Cal, obviously, I've said it many times, he's been all I've known as far as Kentucky basketball. I mean, he took over that program right as I was beginning to understand basketball and kind of grow into the sport. So, obviously, there's a love there for what he did. And obviously, he kind of brought the magic of Kentucky basketball for me personally. But when I think about it, just the reception that he should get, I don't think that, well, it's tough. Really is a unique situation, but honestly, the way I would see it is he's another coach of an SEC team that's coming into your home court and he wants to beat you. So all things aside, I think you got to treat him as such. Now, if you don't want to give him any reception at all, go ahead. If you want to boo, go ahead. If you want to cheer, go ahead. I mean, you're paying your money to be there, but I definitely think that there's kind of got to be a little bit of a unknown understanding there that like this guy, he's not your friend right now. Like this is the opponent. He wants to come to your court and beat you and shut you up, because I think a large part of this move to Arkansas for Cal was showing the Kentucky fans, hey, I've still got it and I'm going to stick around so you can see that I've still got it. And that's just my personal viewpoint of this situation. And I think that, there's been a lot of talk about cheering and just not booing. I think that if fans want to give him any sort of negative reaction, then by all means go ahead. There's going to be time years down the road for him to get a reception that's just welcomed and happy and looks back on the memories like when he's done at Arkansas. I think that's the time to cheer for me personally. Now, maybe I'm just being a bitter, emotional fan that's in the moment, but that's just the stance that I take when it comes to this game.
That's kind of how I agree with you on that kind of front. It's kind of similar like with LSU and Alabama when Saban went to Alabama. Obviously Saban won a title at LSU. It was great for them, this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, when he came in there, he was the opposing coach. And yeah. I do think there will be a day to truly give him his flowers and his love and everything he deserves. Like you said, at the end of the day, he's coming in there wearing red. And he's wanting to win. He's wanting to leave with Arkansas win and Kentucky loss. And if you're a Kentucky fan, that's obviously not what you want. So.
Yeah, no, not at all. Blake, any final thoughts on what this matchup is going to bring before we wrap it up? I know we'll talk more of the game strictly, but I wanted to make a video here on just the dialogue around it and the emotional kind of aspect, because that might even be more of a big factor than the matchup itself when it comes to this game.
I'd say the biggest word that defines this game is cinema. Like it's overused in media, it's over social media. But I truthfully think this is going to be a cinematic moment. We haven't really seen much of this, like many things like this before in college basketball, let alone sports. So, I mean, this is really going to be an interesting thing to be tuned into. I'm not unfortunately, I'm excited for this. I'm going to be at Royal Rumble, so I'm not going to be able to probably be tuned into the Kentucky-Arkansas game unless I find a legal stream. Shout out Stream East. Shout out all them streaming services. But Yeah, this is gonna be one of those games that like you definitely want to be tuned into, and this is gonna be a lot of fun to like take in almost. Like we haven't seen anything like it before, so I mean I'm excited. I'm sure you guys are excited too. This is definitely a once in a lifetime type of opportunity. So.
Oh, I've had this game circled on my calendar since the day that I knew he was going to Arkansas and the schedule's out. And I've got right here, signed by the man himself, Mr. Calipari.
Yeah.
Get that out of here, Cal. We're coming to beat you down on Saturday. Let's go Cats, baby. All right. I had to get that out of my system. Much love to Calipari. I won't forget what he did for this university. But when it comes to Saturday, I mean, Pope and company, they got to do what they got to do. And Blake, you said the word cinema, very, overused, kind of cheesy term, but hey, it works for this one because this game is going to be a once in a not lifetime, but once in a not so often kind of experience. And I know we're all fired up for it, so we'll see how it all unfolds. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it next week.